Good morning. 2020 Form 4562 Depreciation and Amortization Part 7. Line for Part 2 Special Depreciation Allowance, line 14 to 16, and Part 3 MACRS Depreciation, line 17 to 18. So Part 2, Special Depreciation Allowance and Other Depreciation. Line 14, Special Depreciation Allowance for qualified properties other than listed properties placed in service during the tax year. So special depreciation is a type of depreciation that you could claim on if your asset you place in service during the current year, and we are talking about 2020 tax year, is qualified for special depreciation. So, and that's a depreciation you claim after you claim section 179 deduction and before you claim regular depreciation. And section 179 is part 1 of form 4562. Special depreciation is part 2 and regular depreciation is part 3. But if your property is a listed property, which is properties you use for personal and business, then you do not include that under special depreciation. There is part 5 of form 4562, which address listed property. Special depreciation allowances, you have 100%, 50%, 40%, and 30% depend on the property that is placed in service. And more detail can be found on page 23 of publication 946. And if you want to claim special depreciation, you can read more on the type of properties that qualified. A lot of properties related to recycling will be in the list, but you can read it for yourself to see if that's a type of property you wanted to claim a special depreciation for, and which percentage of the cost or the basis you could claim special depreciation allowance for. So page 23 all the way to believe page 27 will address that. And when you claim special depreciation, well, if you are claiming section 179 deduction, you have to take the amount you are claiming, you are claiming for under section 179 out of the basis to find the remaining amount that you'll apply the percentage of special depreciation allowance to claim on. And that will go on line 14. So line 15, property subject to section 168 election. And you will read more on the instructions as well. So, and we can talk about special depreciation In case you choose not to claim it, I don't claim special depreciation on my business assets. If you choose not to claim special depreciation, it is a good idea to attach a statement to your return, and on that statement you will mention that you are not claiming special depreciation allowance, and you'll mention the property class you choose not to claim that special depreciation on. You could find more information on that as well on page 7 of publication 946, and the version that I have is 2019. As of today, February 14, 2021, I have not seen a new release, a current release for publication 946. And so yeah, that's that. And you'll be able to see they have the same information. You'll be able to find the same information on the instructions to Form 45CC2 depreciation and amortization. Now I believe you should be able to find it on page 6, and the instructions is 2019. The publication 946 has a little update at the beginning that address 2020. So I will say publication 946 is a lot more current than the instructions to Form 45CC2. So line, you talk about line 15. If you think you have a properties subject to section 168, you could read the instructions to see, to read more about it. Otherwise, it will be a line you'll just leave alone. Line 16, other depreciation, including ACRS. A lot of time it will include properties you place in service before 1981, and some intangible properties that are now a part of section 179, intangible properties. And computer software is one of them, and if that's the case, you have to depreciate it using a straight line for 38 months with, I believe it's it's more than 3 years. Let's see if we will find it here. And the publication is more detailed than the instructions, but the instructions pretty much guides you for every single lines of the form. So 36 months, which will be 3 years. If you have a computer software to depreciate, you'll go on line 16 if it's not classified as a section 197 intangible, and you'll depreciate it using straight line for 3 years or 36 months. And straight line is pretty much claiming the same amount every single year beside the first and the last year. something like that. So depend on when you place in service. But yeah, that's the receipt month. So you use the receipt month, you use the cost, and you just depreciate the same amount every single month for the receipt month. So you have to do that to back into it to see how much you will claim for the year. And you could read more on those properties that will qualify for depreciation deduction on line 16 on page 7 of the instructions. So you'll find them here. And if you want to know about section 197 intangible properties, it will be in the instructions as well. And a lot of time intangible properties are amortized, so it will be at the end of the form 4597. If you scroll down, and that will be part 6 amortization section. Okay. Now part 3, MACRS. I like to call it MACRS, but the full name is Modified Accelerated Cost Recovery System, and that's a new system in the sense that, I mean, there was one before, but that's the current one they have been using. It's not like it's for 2020 or anything, but that's the current depreciation system that has been used, and I like to just refer to it as a regular depreciation. So line 17, mark the deductions for asset placed in service in tax year beginning before 2020. They will go on line 17. So unless you are required to file form 4562, you don't have to submit it with your business tax return every single year. So if you only submit it, depending on, unless you are filing a corporate tax like form 1120, I'm not talking about form 1120S. If you are filing form 1120 for a C Corp, for instance, you have to submit form 4562 every single time if you have an asset to depreciate. Other than that, for sole proprietor or S Corp or L.L.C, you only submit form 4562 for assets that you place in service during the tax year that you are filing the tax return for. So that's the first year of the asset in your business, and that's the year you are going to claim the first depreciation deduction. Therefore, you will use form 4562 for that year. The following year, you will continue to depreciate the asset, but if you didn't place any other asset in the business for the following year, you don't have to submit form 4562. You will claim your depreciation deduction for the asset you place in service before that tax year. It will go straight on your business tax return. There will be a place for depreciation, but you won't have to go through for form 4562. So in case you place an asset in service during the tax year, now we are talking about the tax year 2020, for the first time, and you are going to claim the first year depreciation deduction on that asset, and you are going to submit form 4562, then every depreciation deduction that you are going to claim that include asset already in your business from prior years and you have been depreciating, you report those depreciation deductions on your form 4562. Because you are going to use the form, it's a good idea to just put all the depreciation amount on it. So that's when that line 17 comes into consideration. So asset in your business before 2020, you'll put the amount, depreciation deduction that you are going to claim on them on line 17. And line, and I can use an example if you want a better visual example. I have assets in our business placed in service in 2015, I believe. And for 2015 tax return, I filed Form 4562. For 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, if I didn't place any other assets in the business, then I won't have filed Form 4562. But I will continue to depreciate those assets that are put in service, are placed in service, that I've been using the business since 2015. I will continue to depreciate them because I know the useful life of them. Some are 7 years, some are 5 years. So I will continue to depreciate in them as long as they are in use in the business up to the end of their useful life, or up to when I took them out of the business, whichever comes first. Now in 2020, if I have placed an asset in service, and now that I'll file a business tax return for 2020, I will complete Form 4562 for 2020 to include new assets that are placed in service for the first year in 2020, and they will go on Section B. But on line 17, if there is asset that I'm not done depreciating, which will be the 7 years property class life type of assets, then their total will go on line 17. The one that I start depreciating in 2015, if I'm not done depreciating them, they will go on line 17. So that will be an asset that needs to be depreciated for, that has a 7-year recovery period. So that will go there. So that's what that line 17 is for. So line 18, if you are electing to group any asset placed in service during the tax year onto one or more general asset account, check here. So so let's use a visual things here. So assets, if you have multiple assets that you are going to depreciate, you place them in service in 2020 and you are going to depreciate them for the first year, you'll complete Form 4562, depreciation and amortization. But if you decide to group them together, there is something you need to know. They have to have the same classification of property, the same property class, meaning they have to be all 3-year properties, or all 5 years property, or all 7-year properties. The one you have to group is not all the assets you place in service, but how you want to group them, you have to group all 5-year properties together, all 7-year properties together. You cannot group 5 and 7 years property together. They have to have the same property class. They have to be placed in service the same year, which will be in 2020 if that's what you are filing for. And they have to have the same recovery period. You'll use the same convention as well. So let's make sure I'm not omitting anything here. So the same recovery years, depreciation method, and that would be F, depreciation method, recovery period, that would be D. Same convention, and that would be E. Pretty much D, E, F has to be the same for them. They are placed in service the same year, and let's see, the same number of recovery years, and they have to have the same property class. They didn't put it here, but let's go back here. And recovery period and classification of property, a lot of times they go together. So, but yes, they had to have the same property class, same recovery period, placed in service during the same year, have the same convention, the same method, depreciation method. So pretty much what will be different is the cost, how much they cost is going to be different, which means the depreciation deduction is going to be different as well. But other than that, every other column should be the same for the asset before you group them. If you choose to group them, then you'll check this box here. I have group assets before, but for 2020 I'm now going to group assets, and the reason why I'm not it's your business, you have to choose how you want it to do it. One thing you need to keep in mind is when you group assets and you are not done depreciating them, and 1 year you decide to take one asset out, it's not going to affect the basis of depreciation. You'll continue to depreciate everything else, but that depreciation deduction for that particular asset that you took out might be reported back as an income. So, and if you know you are going to keep the asset in your business for the full useful life, then grouping it might be a simple way of doing it. But what I intend to do in 2020, because I have multiple assets classified under the same property class, and I place in the service the same year, the recovery period is the same, and the convention is going to be the same. The depreciation method I will use the same, but I will choose not to group them. So now grouping them to me means that I will be using multiple Form 45-CC2 to report their depreciation information for each one of them. So if I have 6 assets all under 5-year property class, I'll be using 6 Form 45-CC2 to report them. But then after that, I won't be filing Form 45-CC2 for 2021 unless I place another assets in service that year. And if in 2021 I place one asset in service, then all the 6 assets that I start depreciating in 2020, I'll put the total amount on line 17 for 2021 tax return, and I will only file section B for one asset that I placed in service in 2021. I don't know if that makes sense. But if you don't want to group assets, then you'll have to pretty much report their information one by one. And if you need, you only have one line here for 5-year property. you don't want to group them, they ask for basis for depreciation. So that's by assets, by property. Unless you are grouping them to have the total for all the 5-year property. So that's what that means. When you group them, you have your templates where you have all 5-year properties or assets that will go under 5 years. You total them all there, you put their basis here. The recovery periods will be 5, and the convention you wanted to use and the depreciation you wanted to use, and you already calculate the depreciation deduction on your draft and you put it here. So you group them, you select here, you check it, and you put the total here for 5 years. And then if you have assets under 70-year property, you group them on your draft and you place the total information here as well. But if you don't want to go that route, you don't check this box, then if you have like 3 assets that will go under 5-year property, then you just have to put them one by one. So that means you'll use multiple form 4562, and you'll just enter the information for one asset belonging to 5 year. And why not? If you have asset for 7 years property, you can put one down there as well, and you use another form for the second asset that belongs to 5-year property information. And if you have another 7-year property, you'll put it there as well, and you use another form until you have them all filled up. And you could use a separate form where you total them all as well. And if you do that, you might put summary on top so that it's clear that you are summarizing all your form 4562 into one. And if you are doing that, so that means where you need to have total, the total for every form could just be the total for that form, and the summary will be the summary for all the forms. Don't know if that makes sense. Or you could even leave the total blank and then summarize them on the summary form so that you have just all the total on that form, so that it's now confusing. So that's all we'll cover in this session. Part 2, line 14 to 16, special depreciation allowance, and part 3, prior year assets placed in service prior year to the tax return. You are filing for line 17 and line 18, whether you elect to group assets or not. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you all that subscribe to our channel, and thank you for all your comments. We thank you very much for watching our videos, for listening to our podcast, and for reading our blog. We will have instructions to the part we describe in the video on our blog, ninasop.com. If you wanted to to take notes on that, so it will be on our blog. I'm Afiavi Odune Liberman, creators of Liberman Consulting L.L.C. YouTube channel, Liberman Consulting L.L.C. podcast, ninasop.com, our blog. And you'll be able to find links to Form 4562, links to Instructions 4562, and links to publication 9 for receipts under free downloads, and I believe it will be 2020 federal forms and instructions. So you'll be able to access those links on our blog nasoup.com under free downloads. Thank you so much for your time. We do have online stores including digital downloadable products, liberdownload.com, natural products at ninassoap.com, custom apparels at liberlabel.com, and resale products at liberoutlet.com.